So, hello everyone. Welcome to whatever this thing is going to become. So, my name's Gary Turner, and we have the wonderful.
Oh, I'm Christina Sayson, and I'm here in the Philippines right now. I'm from the Philippines, so I'm being where I am. And how about you, Garry?
Amazing. Thank you, Christina, for joining me. And I am Gary, based in the UK. So, we have got a very intriguing, and that's the seed for today, really, a very interesting mix of worlds, both old, new, and emerging. And I think, Chris, that's sort of, we found each other through the Possible Futures Collective. We've got to know each other quite well. So, very, very different histories, backgrounds, and futures. But we just felt
Mhm.
drawn, didn't we, to sort of co-create a space that has the conversations that we don't think are really being had honestly enough
That's
all
true.
around the world, really, right? I guess is part of this.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that doesn't really happen, for instance, particularly with folks from the global north. So when we say global north, we're talking a lot about Euro Americans, folks from Australia, even folks from Japan and South Korea for on some level. It's
Hmm.
that idea of kind of this comfortability bubble so that you don't really see what's actually going on outside of the global north.
Mm.
And one of the things that I really kind of like about getting this conversation rolling is that we're both of us, you and I, Garry, we're coming from very different spaces. I am extremely unemployed and quite possibly unemployable. I don't know. But also rather overqualified, like overeducated in that I have an MA in anthropology, but also coming from a place of privilege relative to many of my peers here in the Philippines. And at the same time, being confronted daily with just the little horriblenesses of being colonized and growing up with colonial trauma baked into my epigenetics even, and
Mm.
and on some level because there was probably, oh, content warning, a little bit of rape down the line in my in my in my ancestry thanks to the colonial experience.
Mm.
um it's it's just baked into who I am, and I know that history in general is not free from suffering regardless of where you're from, but there's some very special kind of messed upness to being from a former colonial power, from a former colonial possession, as opposed to someone being from a former colonial power.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important segue, Chris, and thanks for sharing so openly. And I think that work for me, without centering myself, but just practically, with possible, with you, with the Possible Features crew going through that, intro to decolonial sustainability journey,
Yeah.
and working within big corporate space, which I do, within chemicals, right? Like within extractive, well, the ultimate colonial endeavor, like taking stuff out of the ground, owning people's land and resources, and then claiming it as your own and then reselling it, right, for profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
In 2025, like that is still modern day capitalism. And the wildness of this conversation in some ways and how much it shouldn't be happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? In many, like there is no media channel on this planet, maybe Novara Media, maybe not, maybe something else, but this shouldn't be happening. Like we shouldn't be able to connect across this massive gulf that's taken 500 to 600 years to separate, right?
That's a really good point, though. Like that the Gulf is a 600-year-old one, and that the powers that be that currently hold the most hegemonic sort of grasp over people's, not only their minds but their economics, their lives, their health, their weapons, would rather not see two people from different sides of the world converse in a frank way about the inequalities that we each see from very different perspectives.
Mm. This really brings up something I talk about a lot, Chris, here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Is, let's say you've shared the context from the Philippines in the so-called, and this is something too many people don't even realize here in Europe, in the so-called developed, yeah, whatever developed and developing means. We have a whole another conversation on that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But food bank usage in the so-called developed UK has increased from 30,000 parcels in 2008-09 to
Mm-hmm.
over 3.1 million parcels per year as of last year.
Oh, could you clarify for some folks? Because for me, the concept of a food bank is a little unfamiliar because we generally, like, the government doesn't provide that.
Yeah,
And some folks might not get it.
that's a great question. Thanks for the question. So a food bank is actually a charity. So it's not government. So it's not socially supplied. It's actually a charity.
Oh.
So they tend to be charities or churches,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
or NGO type organizations that provide a service whereby mostly
mm-hmm,
regular residents or community members can donate food, toiletries, etc., to a food bank, and then those that need it ultimately can go to that food bank once a week or whatever and get some food, get some toiletries, get toilet roll, whatever they need.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it's a very intriguing, not intriguing, it's a disgusting
Mm.
um, measure of where we are, even in the global north,
Mm, mhm.
even in the so-called developed global north. We've seen the exponential curves that we don't like to see. Like I say, 30,000, like you've gone 100x or 1,000x increase in just 15 years in the use of
Mhm.
these food banks. So what does
So
that tell us?
previously it was how many? And
Yeah,
then today it's 30,000 plus.
so it was 30,000 in 2008-09
Mm-hmm.
per year, all across the
Mm.
whole of the United Kingdom. Last year, it was over 3.1 million parcels.
Million.
So what is that? 100 or 1,000x increase in just 15 years.
Yeah. That's quite indicative of some of way more people feeling quite insecure in their capacity to get even the basics like food or toiletries, as you said.
But we are developed, Chris. Don't forget, Christina. We're a developed Western global North country, so everything's good, right? Like so it's so intriguing because then we look down, not down. We look at the global South
Mm-hmm.
directionally, and I would look at you, Christina, and the conversations we're having and what we're trying to bring forward. This is healthy, right? What we're trying to do
Mm-hmm.
here is reignite health and something more generative, something more collective, something more equal over time.
Yes,
And what I've just described is the embodiment of unhealthy, degenerative, unequal.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think um to just kind of expand on that, I think one of the things that really is quite worrying is because those of us here in the global south tend to be the first to feel the effects of global issues like global recessions or climate change. I mean, the Philippines has, did you know that it's a bit of a segue, I'm sorry. Did you know that here every typhoon is named in alphabetical order? And when there are like big typhoons that come in, so the first one would be named, like, starts with letter A, so maybe Adam or Antonio or Alicia. And then the next one would be starting with letter B, so and so on and so forth. And we have had for the past several years an alphabet soup of typhoons. And last year, I think in 2024, we almost hit went back around to letter A just in 1 year.
No, I never knew that. Oh my God.
And in fact, there was one time earlier last year when there were 5 back-to-back typhoons over the course of 2 weeks. And like it's those things that people don't talk about as much. But then when it starts flooding in, I think it was Valencia, Spain,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it was the talk of the town everywhere
Yeah.
all the time. And people were like, oh, climate change. Oh, it's so bad. And it's like there are people in not only here, but in the island chains along the Pacific that are literally having to evacuate their homes precisely because of climate change. And that's rarely being talked about. And I think the how symptomatic the fact of the inequality that the UK is feeling right now. Sorry, the inequality that the UK is feeling right now is quite symptomatic of the severity of the problems of inequality that are affecting the planet. And we're just
Mm.
talking on the human scale right now. We're just talking about the ways that people unpeople each other and,
Mm.
completely dismiss and pretend that folks don't exist simply so that certain folks can stay comfortable where they are.
This is really, really important, Chris. And for me personally, I
Mhm.
always try and model a bit of vulnerability. One of my biggest challenges over the last 5 years, as I've been on my own personal and ongoing decolonization journey and trying to join these dots with help, you've been part of
Mhm.
that journey as well, is everything that's being thrown at us globally. I'd love to hear your thoughts from the Philippines, but up here in the UK and in Europe, the lurch to the far right, not just
Mm.
politically but mentally,
Mm.
is
Mm.
incredibly potent at the moment. And the narratives that are being pushed, particularly from those in power, from governments, yeah, exactly as you said, it's blame the one that doesn't look like you. It's
Mm.
easy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Some would call that racism. It's heading towards fascism, right? That's what it is. But the reality is very simple. To oversimplify it, it is literally what you just described, which is they don't look like you. They're a problem. They're the
Mhm.
reason why you can't have as much money as a pay rise. They're the reason why you can't get what you want. They're the reason that you're having to move your house. Instead of going, oh, so we've got all
Mhm.
this increase in food bank usage, and the Forbes billionaire report, there's another 30 people that are billionaires in the last 12 months. And the billionaires that are
Exactly.
already there have got an extra 300 billion in the last 12 months. So there's this really intentional push to the right, but don't look
Mhm.
up.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I think one of the things that you're bringing to the fore for me is just how broken we are as a global culture. Like for those of us who are immersed in the colonial capitalist patriarchal cis heteronormative sexist etc 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 hegemony that was created by the 500-year project of colonialism, we have been so separated from each other and so deprived of the capacity to connect not only with fellow humans but with people who aren't people, like people who aren't human basically. So you know like having, I mean, I'm not saying you should have a conversation with a tree outside your house. I mean, I've done that, but it's it it's more of, that capacity to feel like you're not alone has really been carved out of us, I think,
Mm.
and thrown away just so that a few bajillionaires at the very top can have an easier time slurping up all the resources that people need to survive. And I think one of the things, like what you mentioned about um how there's this, it's not just inequality, but like that slide to the far right in the global north, which is also kind of a slide towards extremism in the global south, comes back down to this extreme fear that has, I think, a lot to do with the ways that the planet has been destroyed by people who had the power to destroy the planet. And like it's as simple as simply as not knowing what the seasons are anymore. Like today, it is roughly around 27 degrees Celsius here in the Philippines. So nice and sunny, very balmy, um, quite comfortable for me actually. And in fact, it's a little chilly for me, and that's telling. Yeah, it's actually quite telling because the average that I'm used to is around 31, 30 degrees Celsius. I think in Fahrenheit that would be 90 degrees. I'm not so sure. Um, and I distinctly remember feeling this warm during the summer season here in April. Right now, it's the cold season right now in the Philippines. And it fills me with a profound sense of sadness that my niece, my friend's children will not know a comfortable summer. And I can only imagine how people of older generations who felt the constancy of the seasons are like just kind of crying out for that consistency again, and the grief that that must involve, you know. Yeah, that made me a little sad. But which is to say that it makes me very angry that 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 sadness, that grief, because we've been so divided and so alienated from one another and from our ecosystems and from our homes and planet, because of that, people are able to leverage fear and use it to push an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And that people are turning towards fear, choosing fear, because they feel like they can't have anything else to choose.
Wow, you've just brought like you really punched me in the gut with like a meta fear then, which is like it's this very weird, like you say, that enforced separation from self, others, nature, non-human, and the void that's left over multiple generations. It, and because of course we're also right, it's so curious because at the same time we've had complete erasure of everything we're discussing in textbooks in the global north. Everything was just about the slave trade, which got sold. Brilliant. Oh, Christopher Columbus, blah blah blah. Like it's such a whitewashed education system, to my knowledge, even today. I've not been in it a long time. So you've got this desensitization, this dehumanization, this disconnection over 500 years. And within that, we've just, because it's been mission creep, right? Supremacy culture has not been like a one and done. Like, God, these people didn't have computers 500 years ago, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how the hell did they manage to create by design what we're now living with when they didn't even have like computers and like satellites and stuff? Like, it blows my mind in a way how they pulled this project off. I'm curious as to your thoughts around that. Like, a sort of, it just blows my brain.
I think a lot of it has to do with, I mean, if we're going to go psychological, you know, it has to do with a form of child rearing that is based more on fear and kind of that absolute authority kind of situation. that creates and perpetuates itself that then is pushed onto folks who leave their home countries. Like, let's say, I read a book. It's called Debt by David Graeber, and he talked
Oh, right.
about how, yeah, he talked about how um, one of the reasons why violence, for instance, like the violence perpetrated by the conquistadors in South America, was so egregious, was because they were in debt. And so there was a sense of not being directly responsible for the atrocities that they committed. I mean, aside from, just being there and breathing germs all over people who didn't have the immunity to old world diseases, there was also the fact that they raped, pillaged, destroyed, burned, and genocided people, made concerted efforts to do so, and then enslaved them so that they could then extract silver from like Argentina and other materials, other raw materials like tobacco and gold and eventually sugarcane and all of that stuff from South America. And it's it's like there's that it comes back down to that separation of the self, where you're someplace new and have you have to absolutely pay back the debt that you have in your old place. And because you are now kind of decontextualized and separated from all of the
Hmm.
accountability measures that would otherwise keep you from being a horrible person, like, even just like, oh, your sister going, you did bad, or the neighbor saying, like, hey, did you know that this person did this thing? It That's not available in a place that is essentially terra nullius. So when you say terra nullius, it means no man's land. It's like
Hmm.
nobody exists there. The Indios, the locals there, were not considered people, at least not in the sense that Europeans saw them at the time, because they were not Christian. And so if they were not Christian, they had no souls. It's so many things. But it comes back down to this erasure on both ends. There's this person who came in from Spain, who went to, say, Mexico, and is like, okay, I am deep, deep, deep in debt. If I go home without something to pay back the debts that I have, they're going to like break my kneecaps or something like that, or they're going to take away the house that where my children live. And then in this new place, that person is given free reign to do whatever the fuck he can, so that he can then recoup the losses that he made by being in debt. And again, like, there's that lack of accountability, but also the lack of responsibility, because the debt becomes more important than the humanity or the personhood of the people whom you use to acquire remuneration. Um, yeah, I feel like I ranted a little bit there.
You didn't. You didn't rant at all, and you're very generous with your analysis, to be honest. And I think, we're not really sure, are we, who we're reaching here? We don't know how people are going to react to this conversation. But I believe, and I love your thoughts, Christina. Like, I, I believe we're doing this because we're trying to show that rehumanizing ourselves, coming
Mm,
together with people from vastly different contexts and backgrounds, and doing that through relationality and not supremacy and belief that you are better than, that
Mm.
we can hear, we can heal, we can co-create, we can reimagine from that space, right? There is possibility from
Yes.
this. Like, we're not here just to educate. We're not here to educate people per se. Yeah, hopefully some people might take something away, might challenge it, may have their own view on something. But I really believe that there's possibility here to go, shit, oh, the world isn't the way I've been conditioned that it looks,
Mm.
and I've got agency to create something better.
And I think it's really, I know it might have been a slip of the tongue when you said that we can hear, but I think that's so important, that we're not just, I mean, that's the beauty of technology. We can now access one another, um and converse in a way that wouldn't have otherwise been possible. I mean, I just take a feather quill and like write in like script, and then it would take like months for me to get to write back to you. And then here we have discourse,
Hmm.
direct discourse. And I think that that's good. But at the same time, like, who owns Zoom? you know
Yeah.
who who is benefiting from us using these technologies? The fact that I'm speaking English is itself a sign of the fucked upness that my people went through and continues to go through, and are actually quote unquote benefiting from, compared to other Asian peoples who don't speak English as um easily as most folks from here do. I think that was a bit of a segue. I'm sorry, to go back to like
Mm-hmm.
being able to hear,
Important.
to go back to being able to hear one another. I think if we are receptive to that, that's already a huge thing. Like the generativity of saying, you know what, I'm ready to listen, and I'm ready to give back as good as I'm getting in a way that isn't like battle, is very, I agree. Like, it creates space for hope, where people want, not people, the powerful institutions and the people who run them would rather we sit alone and afraid in our darkened houses, doom scrolling through Facebook, while everyone else, like, you know, is posting their best of reels or whatever. Or, yeah, it's it's not it's not that this conversation is going to save the world, but as you said, it's just it's just what it is, a chance.
Mm. I really love that. It's a chance. It's it's an opening, right?
Yes.
There's a leverage point, no matter how small or how big, right? There's something that's possible. I'll always come back to possibility, Chris. And I'm really I want to touch on, if I may, because we had a little chat about the house of modernity,
Mhm, mhm,
and
mhm.
that's going to mean something or nothing to some people if they're watching. Might mean something, might not. But we were sort of having a conversation, weren't we, around the sort of seemingly rolling back of DEI, particularly in America at the moment, all around the
Mm.
world, and the fact that it's really intriguing that so many of these so-called powerful corporations have rolled back on something that hasn't even been outlawed fully yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of horrifying, but at the same time, it's quite clear, at least from my perspective, because there's no such thing as DEI here, because everyone is homogeneously brown. And it's more of like, well, there are claims towards DEI where there's a tacked on thing here where this company is an equal opportunity hire, like something something gender, something something disability, like that kind of thing. But when it comes back down to it, it is extremely performative. Like people can do their level best to make it not performative, but the fact of the matter is a company is a company is a company, and the important thing for them is the bottom line. And the DEI, as it had been before, simply affected the bottom line in that it gave it, or people purported that it affected the bottom line in that it gave it good press. But now that there's, shall we say, an interest in things other than DEI, um, you know, it's they're obeying in advance, and kind of it's all full mask off, like that. Aha, we don't have to pay for this anymore. Let's continue to make more money, profits everywhere, and but it's just for the shareholders. It's just for top management.
It's so we've covered a lot of ground, Chris,
Yeah.
in our first exploration. I'm loving I'm loving this, and I'm hoping that people. What I will invite, and I'll probably actually say this at the beginning rather than as we sort of go to wrap up the first one.
Mm-hmm.
We please build on this, Chris. Like we are interested in your perspectives. We are interested in how this is landing with you, what isn't. But please be respectful and please be
Oh,
kind.
yes.
And don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Engage with humanity
Mhm.
and not with dehumanization.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to do something meaningful here in collaboration. And yeah, feel free to add or challenge anything I just shared, Chris.
No, I definitely agree. I think, for one, it comes back down to that thing where the thing I mentioned, where like people are feeling very lost and alone. And so they'll lash out, they'll start spitting acid at anything that comes close to them or challenges their perspective, because then they're comfortable in their little towers all alone. And it takes strength and it takes courage to listen, to hear, and not just say, oh, I don't want to hear the rest of it, but to say, okay, let's see where this is going. All right. And allow yourself to be changed by it. Um, it's it, it's easy to be a dick. It's fucking lazy to be an asshole. So I think that's my addition. Like if
I'm seeing a new branded T-shirt. I think you've just literally created our first merch.
okay, it's lazy to be an asshole. It's just a dick in a lounge chair with a little martini.
You're all over it. You're all over the marketing already. I love it. I love it. Oh dear, so good. I really appreciate you, Christine, as well. And I do want to actually. You don't have to. We can edit this bit
Mhm.
out if we want to. But what I'm asking this as an open curiosity, and you just never know who might see this. Like, what
Mhm.
does healthy generative work look like for Christina in the Philippines going forward? Like, what if you could paint a picture of this is the work
Mm.
that I want to be doing. This is the stuff I want to be contributing in a generative way to my community. If you've got sort of, I just wonder what those sort of threads look like.
Well, for me, it has never been about the institutions, because I have academic credentials, so I could teach, and I've been told I should teach, but and I've applied. My God, I have tried. And people are like, nope, nope, we don't need that right now. Part of it is because I live outside of Metro Manila, which is the capital of the Philippines. And so most local universities that aren't like big universities are focused more on, uh, shall we say, practical courses like accounting and business administration and nursing and law and that kind of shit. So no one really wants an anthropology teacher. And but I would love to have the ability to hold space for folks to have conversations about our history and be informed, like have access to books, to articles, to literature, and even like multimedia content that would help people think through this. So like a while back I was thinking like, oh, I'd love to have like a little bookstore cafe situation, which I've looked it up. It's not very viable, like financially, because both bookstores and cafes don't make much money, and it's a business to client kind of situation, which tends to be quite volatile as
Mhm.
opposed to business kind of situations. So yeah, I've done my homework. Um, but it's something that I still would like to have at some point, and it has to involve ice cream because I really like ice cream.
I love you got your prerequisite. I love it. Oh, fantastic. Well, look, Christina, is there a best place for anyone that is curious to have a conversation with you, or I think you've got your own YouTube channel. What's the best way, should you want people to contact you? What's the best way for people to do that?
Oh, I have a website, ChristinaMSayson.com. So the Christina is CH and the Sayson is SAYSON. And there's a contact me page there, so you can contact me through there. And there's also a little Calendly linky thing there if you're really eager to have a conversation. But I'd like to request that if you use that one, it's with the intention of eventually paying me because I need money. I, as much as we would like to not live in a capitalist society that squeezes our soul out through our wallets, it's just not how it is. So I need to survive. I need money for medicine. I need money for groceries, all of that shit.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And for anyone who wants to contact myself, best way to do that is via the Radicality website. That's radicality.com and gary.turner@radicality.co. That's not, yeah, .co.uk. Sorry. Gary.turner@radicality.co.uk. Christina, I think
Mhm.
this was the right balance of fun, reality check, a little bit exploratory. I think it's a good
I
first
think
go.
so. Yeah, yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Garry. And I think this was a good start. Like we can have this conversation again sometime.
No, I look forward to that, definitely. And thank you, anyone, again, if you've watched some or all of this, we do welcome constructive, healthy, generative comments.
Yes, don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole, don't be a dick. On that note,
Yes.
till next time. Cheers.
See you.
See ya.